Over a month of home quarantine, have enough food but no interaction. The social creator become hyperactive social, but still can create something new and interesting with friends. Anyway, welcome everyone back to your .com podcast, where we talk about whatever related to the .com. And today, our topic is about e-commerce, how it's evolved, and what are its features and themes. I already invited some of the experts in this field to our podcast today. Welcome, Mr. Ziyang,
Hello.
Mr. CEO, Ms. Ngân Hà,
Hi, thank you for having us here.
and Mr. Việt Hòa.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am glad to have you all here. Let's talk about the definition of e-commerce, a thing that became a phenomenon in recent years. We all have heard of the term e-commerce at some certain point in our life, but what exactly is it?
Thank you, Mr. Zoom. So in theory, e-commerce is a use of the internet, the web, and the mobile apps and browsers running on mobile device to transact business. Well, basically, we can see e-commerce is made up of e and commerce. So the letter E stands for electronic or internet is either okay. So e-commerce is the buying and selling of goods and services via the internet and the transfer of money and data to complete the sales. So to quickly understand the term, I suggest we can think about the examples. Companies like Amazon, eBay are e-commerce companies because they are business which are online retailers and perform millions of transactions a day are completely based on technologies to operate, right? Meanwhile, companies like Deloitte, KPMG are not e-commerce companies, even though they are using technologies in their work, because their main activity is not related to e-commerce. So in Vietnam, e-commerce has been on a rapid rise, increasing from about 28% in 2007 to nearly half of the population in 2020. So to forecast by 2025, over 7% of Vietnam's 100 million population is expected to be using e-commerce transactions. So to achieve such a milestone, we should say thanks to the biggest e-commerce platform in Vietnam like Thế giới di động, Tiki, and Sendok. They contribute largely to our country development. So however, we should not confuse the definition of e-commerce with e-business.
E-commerce and e-business. I guess the e-business is a broader sense compared to e-commerce. The e-business refer to how company involve information technologies in their business activities, but e-commerce refer to online transactions.
Yes, exactly. For example, the activities will be considered to be e-business. Email marketing, inventory management system, workflow management system, human resource online tools. On the other hand, sales websites, online payment, placing orders online, and virtual marketplace are examples of e-commerce.
Okay, thank you. There is one more thing. From a non-technical perspective, I still have some questions regarding to the definition of e-commerce. You mentioned about the internet, the web, and mobile platform. What are they?
So to talk about the internet, maybe all of you can easily understand, and you are all using the internet to join these conversations, right? In a simple sense, it is the global network of servers of connected computers in which users at any one computer can, if they have permission, get information from any other computers and vice versa. About the web is a subset of the internet as it refers to using the internet to access pages on the web browser like facebook.com and twitter.com. And the last thing about the mobile platform, that is just a version of web browser to access via a mobile device. This platform is getting more use over time to take advantage of technological development.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ziyang. I think
Thank you.
this is amazing to see how e-commerce grow in our current time. and it also become an essential part in the top companies in the world. But what is the history of e-commerce? Who came up with it?
Who came up with e-commerce? Well, that's a pretty hard question to answer because uh, e-commerce first show up with the advent of multiple huge e-commerce companies such as eBay and Amazon. So it's difficult to pinpoint who began e-commerce and what exactly is the time it began.
Okay.
But however, the
Okay,
entire history of
I see that there is no specific time where e-commerce start. But what about during this course of development? Are there any phrases on how e-commerce evolved?
the entire history of e-commerce can be summarized into three phases: invention, consolidation, and reinvention. The first phase, invention, start from 1995 to 2000. And the striking characteristic of this phase is very high growth and very high technological innovations. However, all they came to an end after the dot-com crash. And for entrepreneur, the e-commerce was the opportunity to harness the extraordinary profit by being the first mover. And sadly, in the second phase, the consolidation phase, which start in 2001 and end in 2006, only few companies actually survived the dot-com crash and only actually become the first movers, while most of the startups fail or have to merge with those big ones. And the long-term prospect of e-commerce companies would reassess. And despite that, the e-commerce market is still real because people now could access the internet more and more due to higher broadband network adoption and cheaper personal computer. Now the final phase, which start in 2007 and still continue to today, began with the emergence of smartphones and social media. As you know, smartphones allow a very prominent mobile platform which allows consumers to access the internet daily, even more easily than their personal computers. And also the emergence of the Web 2.0, which you know as the blog or social media, enable user-generated content, allows companies to better understand their customer. As a content also became a major product, which is commercialized by influencers and YouTubers. And so companies feel the need to extend their presence to social media. And surprisingly, on-demand service business such as Uber, Airbnb also emerged and became success using cloud computing technology to make use of spare assets.
Okay, I see. So we can break down the evolution of e-commerce into three phases. However, is e-commerce considered a succeed or failure during this course of development?
Well, to be objectively, the e-commerce is a mix of successes and failures and even surprise. From a technological viewpoint, e-commerce is definitely a huge success because it proved that the internet is a very successful technology, and now the internet is operating more transactions than ever before. However, from economic perspective, e-commerce is quite different from the economist's anticipations because there is no perfectly competitive market on the internet. The price dispersion still exists across the online market, and the overall transactions cost remains high. And now from a business perspective, a first mover strategy proved to be a failure because only few first mover success, as I said before, and they are usually being displaced by the early followers. Despite that, e-commerce and also internet influence commerce I expect to keep growing as the web becomes consumers' universal source of information. And the most surprising outcomes is how the mobile platform and social media heavily impact e-commerce today, and also the success of the on-demand business.
Okay. Talk about the perspective of economist. What formulate the two perspective?
Let's dive deeper into the e-commerce perspective. Because in the first period, the invention phase, the e-commerce saw e-commerce as a friction-free commerce, meaning that there would be no information asymmetries or very high transaction costs on the internet. And yet, price dispersion still exists due to firms knowing how to hide the true price on their websites, and also due to them being able to differentiate their products and service and create their own brands that customer trust more than other brands.
Mm.
And of course, high operation costs is also due to complicated online shopping procedures and intermediaries. And most economists believe that internet will erase intermediaries in the future, and yet they still exist in the form of either physical stores or online third-party platforms.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chu Hiếu. So we have mentioned about the definition and the history of e-commerce. What are the three typical features of it?
Okay, so I answered this one. So there are actually 8 unique features of e-commerce, but today I'm going to focus on 3, which is ubiquity, information density, and personalization. So ubiquity is the fact that e-commerce is available at anywhere, anytime. So because of that, from a business point of view, you can kind of expand your business because geographical barriers are no longer relevant. And from consumer perspective, it's a lot easier, it's a lot more convenient, and it costs a lot less to shop online. So the second one is information density. So e-commerce technologies over the years have lowered the cost of processing and storing information. So it's a lot cheaper. So information is a lot cheaper, and it's more accurate and more timely. So it definitely helps both buyers and sellers make more informed decisions. And personalization. So again, e-commerce technologies have really improved over the years, and they now have the means to sort of customize the products or the advertisement to certain niche or target market. So Facebook ads is a good example of this. So Facebook sort of use an algorithm that kind of take in all the data you provided, like your gender, your age, your location, your ethnicities, and from there they kind of predict your preferences and interests and kind of runs ads based on that. But then, so these are just similarities from e-commerce compared to others, but still different e-commerce businesses are still differentiated from each other based on, say, business models.
What are they? What are the business models of e-commerce?
So there are 6 main business models in e-commerce. Can you change the slide? Thank you. Okay, so these are the main business model of e-commerce. The first one is business to business, or B2B. So these are just online businesses that cater specifically to other businesses like Alibaba.com or LinkedIn.com or MailChimp. Next one is B2C or business to consumer. These ones are the most common. So things Amazon, Walmart, Netflix. They are online businesses that sort of sell the products to consumer. Next one is consumer to consumer or C2C. These one are mostly marketplaces like eBay or Craigslist, where consumers can offer their products and services to other consumers. But now we have other kind of platforms like Airbnb and Uber that kind of like allocate spare resources. So the next one is mobile e-commerce. So mobile e-commerce is just a kind of how can I say this? Kind of use mobile devices for e-commerce business. It used to be kind of a transition or just extension of e-commerce from desktops and laptops to mobile platforms. But now we have businesses like Momo and VNPay that specifically do the transactions online on mobile. I'm sorry for that. Social e-commerce is the combination between e-commerce and social media. Think the buy button on Facebook and Pinterest. And the last one is local e-commerce. So this is when e-commerce sort of use their geographical location to their advantage, like Ubers and Grabs and Groupon that sort of like use their locations as their sort of like their specific, kind of like their differentiation from other businesses, so to speak. But still, there are still combinations between business model instead of just pure B2B or B2C. Like think LinkedIn. LinkedIn are actually shifting from B2B to B2B2C to kind of cater to even more kind of audience, so to speak.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Nganha. So we have seen that e-commerce is a wide denominator. Is there a way to break it down so that the audience can better understand what are the interrelated themes in e-commerce?
Yes, I admit that as a true fact, e-commerce is a very difficult for everyone to understand completely, as there are many faces to the phenomenon. But we can nevertheless find it useful to think about e-commerce as evolving three broad interrelated themes: technology, business, and society. There's no order of importance here, only chronological one. Technology appears and develops first, then it is exploited commercially, which is called the business phase. And when it is becoming widespread, social, cultural, and political issues arise, and society has to respond. We move on to the first theme, technology. E-commerce is above all else a technologically driven phenomenon that relies on a host of information technologies as well as fundamental concepts from computer science developed over a 50-year period. The core of e-commerce we see now are the internet and the web. Underlying these technologies are the complementary ones, which we are familiar with and use every day: cloud computing, desktop computers, smartphone, tablet, local area networks, relational and non-relational database, client-server computing, data mining, fiber optic switches, etc. And surrounding the tech are the sophisticated business computing applications such as enterprise-wide information system, supply chain management system, manufacturing resource planning system, and customer relationship management system. The second theme here is business, which are new concepts that arise because of the advancement of technology. New techs mean new ways to organize production and transacting business. Firms have to abandon traditional strategy and come up with new ones to catch up with the opportunities and extraordinary return on equity e-commerce brought to the world. The third and final theme would be society. As the impact of e-commerce on society has become more and more significant and global, e-commerce is increasingly subject to the laws of nations and global entities as well. The primary societal issues need to be understood to conduct a successful e-commerce business or understand the e-commerce phenomenon. They are individual privacy, intellectual property, and public welfare policy. Let's talk about individual privacy. E-commerce raised difficulties for preserving privacy as the internet and the web are extremely adept at tracking the identity and behavior of individuals online. A prime example could be mentioned is the conflict between two Chinese entities: TikTok, a newly emerged social network, Huawei, an e-device manufacturing and telecommunication company, and the US authority. In 2020, President Donald Trump has executed a ban on TikTok and Huawei, restricting US citizens from using them and US chip manufacturers such as Intel from selling to Huawei, as there are proofs of them gathering private information from users and sending it back to their homeland, China. About intellectual property, e-commerce poses special challenge to the various methods societies have used in the past to protect intellectual property rights, as the cost to distribute intangible assets on the internet is nearly zero. The global nature of e-commerce also poses public policy issues of equity, equal access, content regulation, and taxation. As many e-commerce platforms arise in Vietnam, such as Lazada, Shopee, and many other live streaming selling platforms, Vietnam authority is having a hard time putting everything under control, and many illegal doings have been caught, albeit a very small amount compared to the total volume, such as tax fraud, contraband, fakes, etc.
Okay, I see. So it is amazing in the way how e-commerce bring value to business with technologies. But still, there are some social issues that are needed to be dealt with. Thank you so much, everyone, for such an exciting discussion on business, on e-commerce. And I think this is the end of our podcast today. Thank you and goodbye. See you in another episode.